Welcome to CNBC's Your Money, Your Vote on this election night in America. We are live from the heart of capitalism, the New York Stock Exchange. I'm Carl Quintanilla. Tonight we will take you from Wall Street to Washington to Silicon Valley as we break down what the election results mean for your money and the economy. Riding shotgun with us tonight, the voice of the American investor, Jim Cramer. Scott Wapner is going to break down the market implications of tonight's results along with the investment committee. Plus, we'll talk to some of the biggest names in business, including former NEC Director Gary Cohn, former SEC Chair Jay Clayton, hedge fund titan Mark Lazary, Altimeter Capital's Brad Gerstner, and former Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez. Let's get to it. Right now, polls are closing in Indiana, Kentucky, Vermont, Virginia, and South Carolina. And in the first of the battleground states, Georgia, here are some of the calls being made this hour. NBC News projects former President Donald Trump as the winner in Kentucky, while Vice President Kamala Harris is projected to win Vermont. Meantime, the battleground state of Georgia, too early to call, as well as Indiana, South Carolina, and Virginia. Also, four of those states too early to call. So let's get a check on where the candidates stand in the race to 270 electoral votes. Harris, at this point, has 3. Former President Trump has 8.
That's another major factor that I think investors are starting to worry about.
Gary, while you're talking, NBC News has now projected Donald Trump to win Indiana. That is 11 more electoral votes, and that will bring his total now to 19, sir.
I mean, no surprises there, Gary. So
yeah, polls closing in 3 more states, battleground North Carolina, as well as in Ohio and West Virginia. Right now, NBC is calling West Virginia for former President Trump. North Carolina, though, still too early to call, as is Ohio. There are 33 electoral votes up for grabs between those two. Trump now has 23 electoral votes. Harris has 3. It is 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and polls in 17 states are closing right now, including battleground state Pennsylvania. At this hour, NBC News is projecting former President Trump as the winner in 5 more states: Alabama, Florida, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, while Vice President Kamala Harris projected to win Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Massachusetts. The other 9 states include Pennsylvania, currently too early to call. This is where that puts us on that number you just saw. Former President Trump with 90, Vice President Harris with 27. We will continue to do that math as we work our way through a very long night.
It's a serious cut, so you're going to have to grow your way out of it.
While I have your time,
and we did that during the Clinton
really quick here, Richard.
We grew our way out of it.
Some breaking news from NBC News calling South Carolina now for President Trump. That gives him another 9 electoral votes. We continue to watch some of these projections come in along the East Coast.
But that rally in Raleigh might give you a sense of what they think as well.
Some polls closing here at the half hour in Arkansas. NBC News projects Donald Trump as the winner there, picking up another 6 electoral votes, and that does bring former President Trump's vote count to 105 and Harris to 27. Polls in 15 more states, including swing states Michigan and Wisconsin, close in about half an hour at 9 p.m. Eastern time. That is going to be hugely important to this race.
For a moment, head back to Carl Quintanilla, who has breaking news for us. Carl.
Scott, we got Delaware. NBC News calling it for Vice President Harris, and that does get her another 3 electoral votes. That's going to bring her total, Scott, to 30 as we again wait some more potential decisions at the top of the hour. Some fresh calls are coming from Decision Desk at NBC News. Donald Trump is the projected winner in the following states: North Dakota with 3 electoral votes. He's also the projected winner of South Dakota. That would give you another 3 electoral votes. Former President Trump will also capture the state of Wyoming, another 3 EVs. And, of course, the big prize of the hour is the state of Texas, and it's 40 electoral votes. NBC projecting Trump is the winner there. Texas has gone red since 1980. Eamon's going to take you back to Ann Richards' time.
That's right.
The key battleground states. At this point, still too early to call. Michigan and Wisconsin, too early. Arizona also too close to call. Update here from NBC News projecting that Donald Trump has now won the state of Mississippi. That's going to give him 6 electoral votes and bring his total to 160 EVs. Vice President Harris currently with 30. Scott will continue to watch some of these names. Again, the battlegrounds we continue to just monitor incrementally. No calls on those yet. Projections. This time, NBC News projecting Trump has won the state of Louisiana. That's 8 electoral votes and will bring his total to 168. Meantime, some breaking news. NBC News projecting Kamala Harris has won the state of Rhode Island. That's 4 electoral votes. Eamon, as we continue to watch some of these East Coast returns.
Yeah, no surprises still. We're waiting for the big kahunas in terms of the battleground states as we go through the evening, and we just don't have any indication yet, Carl, of where that is.
Some breaking news. NBC News now projects that Kamala Harris has won the state of New York. That's 28 electoral votes, and we'll see what that does to her total, now 62. Versus former President Trump at 168. So we'll keep our eye on that. Breaking news, NBC News projecting that Kamala Harris has won the state of Illinois. That's 19 electoral votes and will bring her total, I think I just saw something with an 8 handle. Yeah, 81. Eamon, we continue to watch that spread narrow a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one, Illinois, right? And we saw New York also, some big numbers now ticking onto the Kamala Harris side of the ledger. But again, none of the big battleground states yet. We just have to wait for those as the night goes on and watch, look at Pennsylvania, look at Wisconsin, look at Michigan. That's where Kamala Harris needs to put up some numbers tonight if she's going to start to really turn this thing around. And you look at those exit polls that we just gave you, and you do get some tea leaves that are feeling like it's a good night for Trump.
Tonight, NBC News projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of Ohio, which has 17 electoral votes. Eamon, some thoughts on some of the Midwest fills in here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to watch this. I'm old enough to remember, Carl, when it was Ohio and Florida that we watched on election nights, right? I mean, I remember Tim Russert back in the day, the famous Florida call with the whiteboard. Tonight, we're not really talking about Ohio, and we're not really talking about Florida. Those were, in essence, foregone conclusions for Donald Trump. Those have become red states in this era, and so we kind of put them in the tally as we expected, and we're waiting for the blue wall states to really make the difference tonight.
Calls coming in from the decision desk at NBC. Designating former President Trump has won Montana. That is 4 electoral votes. NBC projecting that former President Trump will win Utah. That is 6 electoral votes. And NBC News says that Nevada is still too early to call. Brian, I want to add to the conversation Colorado. NBC News projecting that for the vice president, it's going to be 10 EVs and will take her to 91. News Steve now projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of Iowa. That's going to be 6 electoral votes, and this one got a lot of attention in the last couple of days.
A lot of attention over the weekend.
Because of that Seltzer poll, which showed Harris up 3.
Yep, and she's not. so we can get off the polar coaster, and everybody that was focusing on that can go back to focusing on actual vote count. I mean, that was an outlying poll. There's a lot of respect for Seltzer in the polling community, so a lot of people took it very seriously. Clearly, there was some kind of glitch in the data there, or something changed in the last 24 hours. Iowa going for Trump, as expected. No big upset for Kamala Harris there.
News projection for Nebraska. Donald Trump projected to win that. 3 electoral votes so far. It is a split state, of course, with 2 more EVs up for grabs. We'll keep our eye on any 2 throughout the course of the night. That brings the total, as you can see there. Desk. NBC News projecting that Vice President Harris wins California. That is 54 electoral votes. That is 1 less than last cycle. State's gone Democratic, as you probably can imagine, at the presidential level since '92. NBC News also projecting Donald Trump wins Idaho. That's 4 electoral votes. NBC News says Oregon, with its 8 electoral votes, still too early to call. Oregon has gained 1 vote since the 2020 election, and Washington State also too early to call. Yeah. Speaking of which, some breaking news. NBC News projecting Vice President Harris wins Oregon. That would be 8 electoral votes, and will take her total, I think, above 150, 153. Welcome back. Some breaking news late tonight. NBC News projecting Vice President Harris wins Washington State. That is 12 electoral votes. And NBC also projecting she wins Connecticut, an additional 7 electoral votes. That makes the current margin in electoral votes 214 for former President Trump, 172 for Vice President Harris.
We'll come back in a sec, Carl.
Scott, just a quick update. NBC News projecting former President Trump wins North Carolina, and it's 16 electoral votes, and we'll see what that does to the total, 230 to 172. I think Megan Casella might be watching this race pretty closely. Megan?
Absolutely, Carl. That's right. This is, of course, a huge prize for Donald Trump because it is the first big battleground state that is called. On one hand, not a huge surprise, you could say, since he has won that state the past 2 elections. This is now the 3rd time, 3 cycles in a row, North Carolina has elected Donald Trump. But notice the split ticket voting here. That governor's race, Josh Stein with Mark Robinson, was called very early in the night for the Democrat. That's one thing that had made Democrats really hopeful this time around, that Republican gubernatorial candidate could sort of help the Democrats across the ticket. But with that split ticket voting, that was always going to make the path harder for Harris, not only in North Carolina, but in other states as well, if that's happening. Trump had also been nervous about this state. Eamon's been talking about this tonight. He was down there 4 times in the last weekend of the campaign. That was another thing giving Democrats hope. And just one last point on North Carolina. We were down there a couple of weeks ago to do a story looking at all of the public and private investment from both the IRA and the CHIPS Act down there. And North Carolina has been booming because of it. No state had gotten more private investment in clean energy since the IRA was passed than North Carolina, including a $15 billion plant from Toyota in the central part of the state. That's the kind of thing that Democrats had been hoping, even if it didn't directly translate to votes, it was going to help the economy enough to kind of push them forward. But this is a big win for Donald Trump down here, Carl.
Getting some breaking news tonight. NBC News projecting Vice President Harris takes Virginia. That is 13 electoral votes. And then this is interesting. NBC's changing the characterization of Minnesota, now saying it is too close to call, as really it's going to increasingly for the Harris campaign be about the blue wall standing. Yes.
Breaking news now on Hawaii. NBC News now projects Vice President Harris will win its 4 electoral votes. Those go into Kamala Harris's column.
Yes, there's 4 more. But again, the big states that we are still waiting on, of course, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, those are still too close to call.
Okay, we just have news coming in right now from NBC News, and we can confirm that NBC News is now projecting that Donald Trump has won Georgia. It's a state that Joe Biden won in 2020, but now the 16 electoral votes in this crucial swing state of Georgia go to Donald Trump. That would be added to the swing state of North Carolina, which has also been in Donald Trump's column right now.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to CNBC's continued live coverage. As expected, the presidential race is coming down to it was coming down to a handful of nail-biter battleground states, but less so now. Here's some breaking news in New Mexico, and NBC News is calling New Mexico for Vice President Harris, 51.3 to 46.4, but that's very different than where we stand overall, Contessa.
We have breaking news coming in right now, Nebraska, and it looks like Donald Trump has picked up an additional electoral vote right now. NBC is projecting that he will get 4 of the 5 electoral votes. Earlier tonight, they had projected 3 of the 5.
They have a unique system in Nebraska where they don't all go to the same candidate, so that's why it's one of 2 where them in Maine. Yeah. Well, you'll see that format.
And so we'll wait to see what happens with that 5th electoral vote again.
That's the Omaha district.
I don't think you can win that one. You can only win the 4. It's impossible in that district.
It's critical breaking news. NBC News, that's Nebraska. NBC News has confirmed that Donald J. Trump is the winner of Pennsylvania. We got Nebraska on the board. They're going to switch it out. Pennsylvania, seen as really the prize. 19 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the projected winner, according to NBC News, for Pennsylvania.
He also really praised Elon Musk, said a new star here, A Star is Born, and said that he spent some time campaigning with Elon Musk. There you're seeing Minnesota now as NBC projects Kamala Harris as the winner in Minnesota. This is one of the states here in the Midwest. Wisconsin and Michigan have not been called for Kamala Harris. Those were considered part of that blue wall that she needed in order to win. We're waiting on those.
I'm going to say with a straight fit, but breaking news, NBC is calling the election for President Trump.
Wisconsin pushes him up to 276. I think, that, again, this is something the markets and a lot of other people had already figured out. There's a process for doing this at NBC News and going through it.